Hello, John. How you doing? Thank you for coming back to the channel. Your your prediction was right about the
Well,
election. So, we'll go over that.
mhm.
And I just want to remind the audience, make sure you please click the link in the description box of this video and all the videos I've done with John. It'll take you to his website so you can sign up for his periodical and you can also sign up for a reading. And throughout this video, we'll remind you, some of those offerings. But please click the link in the description box of this video, and that will take you to his website. So, John, Trump won the election, and it looks like the Republican Party won the Senate, and it's very close to confirming the actual House also
It's
went
5 seats
Republican.
away, and I also predicted that
Yeah.
as well, that they would win the House.
Yeah, so
Um,
it was a big night. So um, just remind the
yeah,
audience what you predicted,
yeah.
and we'll go from there.
Little backstory. This what I've been doing. This is a 56-year winning streak now. I started when I was a teenager in 1968. And I started to just vibe it. I just started to see, well, I see Nixon winning against Humphrey with a very slim margin, maybe as slim as the one he lost to Kennedy, only he wins. And then it happened. And then so I started. So that was 15 presidential elections ago. And I have been nailing it every time. And I'm always thinking, oh, this time I'm going to lose. But I could just give you an idea. I think I even talked about it in the last shows we did. I know I talked on the 19th of September on Coast to Coast. So that was my big audience all across the United States. And I just couldn't help but saying, I'm not officially saying it yet, but I've been feeling since the turn of August into September, this feeling, because this is an empathic experience for me. I don't know how I do it, and I will never know how I do it. I just do it. Um, I get into a space that my teacher Osho initiated me to get into. So that was back in 1987 in India, and it's really I don't do anything at all. And in that space of innocence, things come to me. And they, after these years of documenting all the things I'm doing, and this is the same with my writings and all of it, it happens that way, that I just take note because I document everything I do so that I can find out how right or wrong I am. And, I just in general prophetic traditions of looking at world trends, I tend to be about 80%, which is very high. Um, but in the election thing, I literally just don't do anything. And then suddenly I feel the people. I feel them. I go into their hearts. I feel them en masse. And I just know. And so that's kind of how I do it. Now, sometimes I had some unusual things in the last few election cycles, like in 2016, I won in both ways. Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote, but Trump's astrology on election night was so remarkable it was 2016, that I said, if he gets that far, if he passes through all the 21 candidates, because I was writing it in 2015, even before the primaries started, I started saying, this guy, his astrology is so amazing on that election day that um, if he somehow gets to the Republican Party convention, if he somehow gets to election day, he could win a stunning surprise. And so what happened was he did. He won the Electoral College, and she won the popular vote. But because she didn't win the Electoral College, she didn't win. So I often it's the popular vote that I count on. The other thing too that was a big moment, and only just back in 2016 or actually 2020 for that election did I realize that when I was writing my book on it and my accounts that um, I always felt that in 2000 that when Al Gore had to recount and they were going to recount, I predicted that he would win by a very slim margin the recount of Florida. And I held to it because it was that same, well, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the people. He did. And of course, you can imagine all the people going, oh, you're just a blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? And of course, I could never prove it until I found out around 2020, early 2020, I found out that a bunch of political scientists and professors and people got together and they said, let's count this thing. Let's count this thing the way Gore should have done it. Like, when he was kicked out of the Supreme Court, because they threw it out for a good reason. They threw it out because Gore came there and his case came there from getting an okay from the Florida Supreme Court, state Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court was right to say, you haven't given us how you're going to count the vote. And we need that. Otherwise, we can't give permission federally for this federal election, the only federal election that we have, which is the President of the United States election. We can't approve it as the Supreme Court of the United States. So they went back. They threw it back, and Al Gore choked. And when I could feel it. Just stay the course. Don't listen to all the people pressuring you. You won this, but he choked, and so he gave it up. So it never got to the state Supreme Court, where they would have given four possible ways to do it. Well, all those votes, all those famous dangling chads where everybody's looking at them like this, and their eyes are bugging out. Famous scenes from the Florida recount when they were just recounting the Democrat controlled counties or districts. So they out there in Tallahassee in some warehouse somewhere were sacks full of all the ballots. And so they went in there and they counted them. And guess what? In all four types of counting, Gore won. And in the largest one, he won by only 76 votes. But he won. So in regards to my own predicting and what I was feeling, that was telling me that my oracular instincts really do feel. Now I have objective proof of it. It really does feel who really votes. And it's only the people who really vote, not the frauds. So when I was writing about the coming 2020 election, I had to say, I think it was in August, I started to see it happening. And then I had to report. I said, this time I'm not sure I'll be able to prove the popular vote of this election because this election is going to be full of fraud. Millions of fraudulent votes. And so I said, that's the situation. But so what I said was that Trump would win the Electoral College again, but that Biden would win the popular vote. I couldn't tell by how much. So it didn't happen that way. I mean, we can't know. And so, I can simply say, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, you're just hedging. Blah, blah. Well, no, I'm not. I'm waiting for someone to recount those votes. I'm waiting for some political scientists in all the 50 states and territories to open up and count them because whether Trump won or not this time around, we need to have those recounted. And I'd be really happy to be proven wrong because, and this is for both sides. It's not good to win in a questionable vote. It makes the people who won illegitimate. There's always this thing, it's always it's like the batter who's batting all these home runs and breaking records until they pull him off, take his bat, saw it in two, and see he's got some rubber or something inside of it that makes it hit balls easier. And that has happened. So that person's may have been not hitting with a cheating bat all the other times, but that means there's always a shadow over it. And I must say that in the Democrats of this election and last election, if you won with suspicion, that is not good for you either. You should also want to have it counted because, you know, if it had not been counted, uh, well, if there is nothing wrong with what went on in 2020, every state governor should say, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm really going to prove you wrong. And all you people who are saying it's fraud, all you MAGA people who are saying it's fraud and a trick, I'm going to make you look stupid and prove it wrong because we're going to recount all 50. Each governor can come up, each territorial governor can come up. Yeah, because we want to win this. I often feel that if Trump was in the position of Biden, he would have said, yeah, recount it. I want to know if I really won or not. It's and if people do not want to know, if they keep these things locked for 4 years, if all the legal attempts to open these warehouses up and look at the votes are still locked up by legal efforts all across the United States, what do you have to hide? If you know it was a legal election, you should be more than happy to say, sure, we'll even help. Here it is. Because we want we want the we want to have the credibility to lead and run this nation. But if you put up roadblocks all through the last 4 years, that says to me that you've got something to hide. And so um, we shall see about that. But to this election, like I said, as I was saying in Coast to Coast, but I was already feeling it since the turn of August into September, and it was growing. I suddenly felt, and I wasn't even looking for it. I was just doing just this moment, doing this or that, and suddenly I stop and go, oh, the men are pulling away from Kamala Harris. Men are leaving Kamala Harris. And this is before I saw her debate with Trump. I said, this is the soccer mom experience that happened to John Kerry against Bush in 2004, where the soccer moms were the demographic that took Detroit away. It took the suburban soccer moms ended his election. So I was feeling okay, and then I watched her in her debate with Trump. And I was saying, oh my God, doesn't they shouldn't have a camera on her because all the time she had this camera, and when Trump was talking, she's like doing this, mm, mm, yeah, she's making faces, kind of acting like a teenager. This is not all the faces. I mean, sometimes you'd see faces in other debates where they go, well, maybe an eyebrow would lift, but this whole, she was so distracting and immature, and that's what it felt. And I was thinking, oh, now I know why this is not the kind of woman that a man wants to date. It's just sometimes the gut feelings of elections, I'm sorry to say, are won or lost by a smile, the tone of a voice, the case in point, the first presidential election debate in 1960, there were three of them and they were televised first time across the nation. And Kennedy had theater sense. He came in, made up, looked nice and healthy. Nixon had just gotten out of his limo to do this thing in NBC, I think it was, or ABC. And anyway, he managed to hit his infected knee against the door knob of the car and cause him excruciating pain. So he was sweating more than usual on his upper lip, and he had no makeup on because he just wasn't savvy. He certainly got savvy after that. In 1968 is considered one of the greatest political campaigns. In fact, people are saying that Trump's campaign and its unexpected surprise is comparable to Nixon beating Humphrey in 1968 when this whole thing with me predicting started. And so uh so Kennedy looked great, presidential, and people saw it. And Nixon looked pasty, like a white sheet on black and white film, and he was sweating all over, so on his face, and especially his famous lip sweat. Um, and he lost that debate. That's the debate that most people watched, and then they wrongly, I would say, but that's okay. People are free to do what they want. I mean, Nixon should have been better prepared. Um, you know, they didn't watch, most people didn't watch the next three debates where Nixon took Kennedy apart. I watched them and I was like, my God, he won the other three. Nixon did. But he lost the important first one, the first impression. It's I wish people would look more longer, but reality's reality. This is how such is the case that people make first impressions of people, and it often is the impression that no matter how much arguing, discussions happen, that's the one they vote for. It's just reality of the times. And so um this people, I felt that people were starting to feel, why isn't she coming out? Because she was in August, she was hiding. She was like literally doing what Biden had done for most of the election, not in her basement like he did in his state of Delaware, but in his house. But she was avoiding, didn't do any hard interviews. Whereas Trump was going around, taking it all on with stride, and love him or hate him, or love her or hate her. The difference is that you knew who Trump was. He was clearly, this is who he is, warts and all. But people were one of the demographics, a lot of women were also pulling away because they're saying, I don't know what she is. She just showed up out of nowhere. We're all expecting to vote for Biden. There's this coup in the White House, and suddenly she's put there. And so people started to take stock of that. The other thing too is when the pollsters, um, it's amazing how this is commonly known in polling that Trump supporters are undercounted and undervalued by most pollsters. And they don't make it easy because there's so much Trump derangement syndrome, and a lot of them don't want to talk to pollsters because they don't know if this person's going to show their name to somebody in the town like their boss and they get fired, because that's happened with MAGA people. So they're a bit reticent to talk about it. But there's a South Carolina named Crowley. I think it's Atlas Pollsters. I'm not sure about the name, but he's one of the few that does not undercount the Trump supporters. He had an unusual way of doing it. He would ask the person not what you thought, who you're going to vote for. He said, "What do your neighbors say to you are the person they're going to go for?" So it's kind of, they feel off the hook. And then because they're not directly being said, what are you going to do? And so then they talk like canaries. It's like, oh yeah, well, I got my neighbors, everybody seems to be voting for Trump this time. I mean, I even had a little experience of that. I live in the deep blue southern end of Whidbey Island in the village of Langley, and the upper side is red, up in the Oak Harbor area, and I was in a line at the local Star Store with other people in the line talking about stuff, and of course, people know about what I do with the predictions and all. So usually they start I don't talk about it unless they start the conversation. But anyway, so I'm in the line with people, and of persons that I know well over the years here, 23 years I've been here. He just said, "Wow, isn't it really something what's coming?" And you know, And he basically said, I'd like to tell people who I'm going to vote for, but people get so upset that uh, I can't because I could lose friends and all that. And of course, it takes no Nostradamus to figure out who he's planning to vote for because nobody's saying that about Kamala Harris in our town. And so I said, I kept it in code. I understand who you're voting for, and I'll just tell you this. Uh, it's going to be a landslide. This is just a week before the election. And he was like, really? Yeah, it's going to be a landslide. Um, and uh, and not only could that candidate win a landslide electoral college at low 300s, beyond 270 that you need, between 320 to 330. That's my calculation. That person will also win the popular vote as well, leaning towards 3%. So, and that candidate's going to take the House and Senate. And that's the message I'm getting. And I personally, even then, was like, God, I'm really going to lose big. At least I'm going to break this streak losing big, just a real bomb, because personally I thought, but I sometimes talk to it and I say, are you sure? And the whole presence of us going, mm-hmm. So, okay, it's too many years at it, so I trust it, even though I don't agree with it. um, so, so of course, a few days later, what happened is that, and I can say just before we got on the show, I did my last take. Now it's official that all I said he would win. Um, I said after the election that he would win all the swing states, that were all up for grabs. And Arizona finally came in and declared Trump. So that means the popular vote is just about finished. I said that the popular vote's going to lean towards 3%, but I also expected that to dwindle some because California had millions more people slowly voting, and that would make it less. But I said it would still be leaning beyond 2% to 3%. And guess what? It's 2.4% right now. So it's out of 2% heading towards 3. It won't get there, but leaning towards 3%. The electoral vote was 312. I said it would be somewhere between 310 and 320, and it was in 312. So it was in that window. And I said the Senate and the House would go. Well, the Senate is 3 seats and is well on its way. Even if the Democrats get a couple seats, it's really they're going to have the majority, which is very important for a lot of reasons. And then now with the 213, and I think the Democrats are around just 203. Let me find out. Let me check. Let me just see here. It's okay. No, that. Yeah, it's 203 for the Democrats and 214. Oh, they just got another. It was just before the show started. There was 213 for the Republicans. So that means 4 more seats, and they get 218, which is the Republicans. They're going to do that. The question is, will they pad it? My prediction, which is still out there, looking at it, is that I think they will get 222 or 223. So that prediction of exactitude is still out. That they will get it, I'm confident that is going to happen. It's just beyond the math really now, even though a lot of the news are not saying it. But so um, the other important thing about this election is that now that we have the votes in, and those votes were kind of around, let's see, let's see, go up here. No, not there. Here. you have a situation of Trump winning the popular vote by 50.4%. That's 74,832,527 votes counted. And that's 99% of, I mean, that's probably going to be around there. Now, Kamala Harris was 71,238,534 votes at 48%. So that's the 2.4% margin. And but an interesting thing is that the if you look at the elections that happened in 2016 and 2020 and even before, you basically get a certain number that's pretty much around 69 to 68 million votes, or 64, 68, or and then you get this whole weird vote where in 2020, when everybody was getting into ballots in states that never did ballots, like we've done here in Washington State. So no one knew how to make it work right. So a lot of mistakes happen. But you got this jump to Biden getting 81 million votes, which is just out of the norm. So statistically, I look at that and I would even say it's interesting that now Trump is his vote is right around where it was last time. So that's interesting, but that's because a whole lot of people voted this time around. I I still think that you can look at if they counted the ballots and if you spread them over close battleground states, there's probably a million fraudulent votes in there. It's starting like where is this number coming from? I mean, and I'm counting the fact that, of course, a lot of people could have voted that wouldn't have voted because they didn't have to go to the polls. And so it was made easier for them. Weeks, where, sometimes it started in late August and in 2020. So, but even if you factor that out, my sense is there's still about a million to million five votes that could have turned the election to what I was looking at for Trump losing again the popular vote, but winning the Electoral College in 2020. Um, and so, I mean, in a way, if people, it just dawned on me, if there were people that wanted to count the votes and actually certify them, and it turned out that Trump didn't win the Electoral College or did win it, then that should have been his term. So he can't do a third term. That some people might argue that they won't work, but some people might be motivated to do that. Well, no, he was elected. Well, of course, he wasn't allowed to be a president. Now he is on his own merits from a vote that no one really can deny. It was a landslide. Um, so, um, so where does it go now? Where does it go now? Very interesting things are happening. Um, I was saying in my Hogue Prophecy Bulletin about the election specials that I was looking at the number 47, that he is president number 47. And I had been warning that if Kamala Harris, warning even back before 2020, when I did her astrology, I was saying that it would be a very hard place for a novice who is really not that experienced in anything to deal with it. And her chart showed a lot of these problems in it that about being authentic. Um, the other thing her chart showed is, strangely enough, it's an effect that I've never seen so extreme in her chart. She had 14 trines and 11 sextiles. And the trines are natural, harmonious gifts, graces from existence that it's just something you do really well. Doors open for you, things happen. And the sextiles they're not as high as a positive, but they're also positive. They're helping you out. And to have so many of those just drowning out her squares and oppositions. Um, I think in her case, and I wrote about it, was that she's a victim of the Peter principle, where you're not a you have the luck that's not in the end a good thing. Too many doors open for you. You know, you have too many mentors like Willie Brown, the mayor of San Francisco, legend in California politics, a really interesting character. No, I grew up in Southern California, so I know about him, but I did not know that he was for 8 years. He had Kamala Harris as his mistress while he was married, and so at that time, he was not only getting some, but he was also making sure that that uh, that she got through the doors and pulled strings and basically well-meaning, but she didn't earn any of that. I mean, she almost couldn't pass the bar. I think she failed to pass it one time, and then I mean, that happens. She did pass it, but then the election where she was elected Attorney General was some small sideline election. That often happens in the lesser roles. It shouldn't, but it does, you know, that we're all looking at, okay, who's going to be the next governor, but we're not going to elect the person that's going to be that governor's Attorney General. It's sort of too abstract. And so a lot less people vote. So it can be a margin of 10, 20,000 votes even in California. So it was a very low turnout for her, and she just got lucky and beat the guy. But it wasn't by much. It wasn't a landslide. It wasn't earned. So you know, similarly, she rolled through because California is so blue, the bluest state out there. You know, it was she always could survive any attack or campaign to become senator as she did because there's just a vast majority of blue voters, Democrats that would vote for her. So again, it was kind of easier than it is for other states. Um, so she ends up um, she tries to run as president in the beginnings of the primaries, the Democratic Party primaries in Iowa, and she was getting ready to go to Iowa and cast her name in the ring. And then in 120 seconds in the first debate, um, Tulsi Gabbard, who was also running as a Democratic candidate for president, uh, completely deconstructed her in public, stated all facts about her life as a as a as the head justice of California and how um, you know, she even put parents in prison and jail for truancy. And you know, the video's all there. I mean, I've watched the videos when she was saying that. So people were, and there was a famous situation, a real scandal where the mother was arrested and put into jail. She had a daughter who had a disease, um, immuno disease of some kind, and so her Kamala Harris's detective goons just came in there and black person, black daughter, and said, your kid has not been in school for 3 months. And of course, well, he said, if you look at it, the reason why is she's in the hospital, you know, and it's not that we didn't want it. She's in the hospital. She's sick. They didn't care. They arrested her. And then she had to fight it for years. And her kid got better, it's now grown up, but it was just terrible. This was happening to a lot of people. She's one of the few that sued the government of California and won. But there were hundreds of people that were taken out of it. You know, talk about being pro-family and all that. You break up families. So that's just one. And Tulsi Gabbard was going, you did bam, and Kamala Harris you know, you want to be in the political arena, you better have a spine. You better be able to come back at it. It's a tough business. And she was just kind of going, and then she didn't push back at Tulsi Gabbard. And then the next day, she made a statement to the press, because the press was like, "Wow, Tulsi really had you for dinner last night," and she said, "Oh well, when you're a primary candidate, as I am." Remember, she's untested. She hasn't had a single vote yet, but she's now, because I am, you're going to get people that are farther down that are going to try to take peace out of you. And then I think a few days after that, she quit her campaign because in the end, she couldn't get 1% approval. So she entered the Democratic primaries and caucuses without winning a single vote. So here again, these trines, don't worry. Don't worry. Yes, you're a mediocrity, but all these trines are just going to keep opening doors for you. And what happened then was a new mentor, not somebody she shared a bed with, but a new mentor, an even more influential mentor, Barack Hussein Obama, who saw her as his vehicle to be that third term that he wouldn't officially do, but he would do by pulling the strings behind the scenes. And so he picked her. In fact, he had not done any king-making stuff since his presidential period in office until the towards the beginning of that primary that Kamala Harris had left with less than 1% of people even knowing who she was. And that any other person that would be okay. Maybe she'll go to work with McDonald's like she didn't do after that. But because there's no record that she worked in McDonald's at all when she said she did. So well, maybe there is, but no record is forthcoming. That's all I can accurately say. It seems to me that there would be somebody she could find and corroborate her experiences. She must remember the McDonald's that she worked at. They could have sent a crew and talked to those people, but no, none of that was done. However, Trump took that around and put on the apron, and for a whole shift, he was working at McDonald's, learning how to do the fries and not touch them, always giving a little extra, and and handing it out the front through the pay window, and waving. It's just like what happened when poor Joe Biden had one of his senior moments and just said, he's just him and his people or supporters are all garbage. Of course, I don't think, he's a Scorpio and I'm a Scorpio. And Scorpios, Linda Goodman used to say this about Scorpios. Everybody always wonders what's really going on behind those Plutonian eyes. There's a bit, they can be kind of there and nice, but there's something else behind. And that happens. But Scorpios can see through the other Scorpio's mask. It's just the way it is. Scorpios can't hide anything from another Scorpio. Um, Biden's a Scorpio, and he has a lot of stuff in the 12th house, like I do, but different things. But I just took one look at him and said, you know what? And good on him in a way, because he was taken out of office not by a bullet, not by election, but by Barack Obama, the person that brought him in, well, helped him win in South Carolina in the primaries. Uh, and there was so what he did is he went to Ray Clyburn, or Mr. Clyburn, who's a head of the Black Caucus in the House of Representatives, a very influential man in South Carolina. And so he said, get the black vote out for Joe. So he called him up and said, and he did. And Joe won with a lot of string pulling and get them out to vote. He won. And then immediately Barack Obama started calling all the other candidates and promising them positions in the cabinet of Mr. Biden, as if he was the boss. And that's why Buttigieg left and all these people left. And then Bloomberg was convinced to also leave with some kind of payoff for that politically or something. And then within a month, the only two people that were left were Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders running against Joe Biden. That was all Obama's doing. All those people got out. So he's literally tampering with elections. He's literally the millions and millions of Democrat Party members and even independents in some cases in some states, if they wanted to vote for somebody that they don't, even though they don't belong to a party. It suddenly Obama steps in and his vote is more important than all those millions of other Democrats. And eventually Tulsi left, and eventually Sanders left. And so it was by a call by phone, it was election victory by phone call, but at least Biden got a lot of votes. Um, and then the pick was Kamala Harris will be your vice president. So what this is saying is that then, with the questionable election that's happened, once again, Kamala Harris, with all those lucky trines, rather unluckily got her again without a vote cast for her in the primaries. Very undemocratic. This is like the Soviet Union does this. When the Soviet Union existed, people were appointed, and then people had to go through the motions of voting for this one party and its one candidate. That's what the Soviets used to say. Oh, yes, all our people come out and vote. Everybody comes out and votes. It's very democratic. They just don't tell you that it's one party and the person that's picked to vote that you're supposed to vote for wins. Now, this is not happening in Russia now for decades. Since the end of the Cold War, Russia, I would say, if you actually study Russian electoral experiences, we should model ours after them. They don't do any computer balloting. They only do paper. And there's cameras in every polling station across the Russian 11 time zones. And the votes are counted. It's kind of like what we talk about doing, but we don't in this country. So if you want to follow a model that works, follow the Russian model, not the communist Russian model of the past, because that's what we are. There's a lot of that. Of course, I'm kind of happy to see that in this election, it looks like ballots were much better handled than I anticipated they would be. So here you get somebody is now the vice president of the United States who never won a vote until she was chosen to tag along with Biden. So now suddenly, I've been warning and telling people since 2018 that Joe Biden has dementia. And it's interesting because a lot of people who are kind of in both sides of the parties of this have been saying, well, I remember he had a problem in 2019. I remember in 2020. Well, uh, I was putting out in my Hogue prophecy reports that this problem years before that. So um, it wasn't that hard to predict that he would come to a point where he might still be there. And I thought he lasted a lot longer than I predicted. I thought he wouldn't last the first year. But what I saw now has happened is by the time of this final year, technically he hasn't been running the country for a while. The Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and Jake Sullivan are playing president in his stead. There's even President Jill Biden, who has had a big part in sheltering him, and she's even been, there's evidence that she's even presuming to do his work for him. You know, there's a precedent for that. That's what happened when Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, and his wife for a couple of years was really running the country, and nobody voted for her. Well, nobody voted for Kamala Harris, and here she was suddenly in the position to, you know, Biden is told by Obama that if he doesn't step down, because he can't be president for another 4 years. He's too old and he's too sick and he's got to step down. Now, isn't it odd that the person he has to step down from running the election to being the candidate, but they still have him in the White House? I, I mean, you know, isn't that a much harder job than running for campaign? And he's got dementia, and so that's just not why they did it. So that means you have a delayed campaign. So now Kamala Harris gets $1 billion, and the campaign, it's starting to come out. The campaign was a train wreck from the beginning. They squandered $1 billion on trying to attract crowds to celebrity meets, so some with a concert or something like that, so that she could desperately fill up a big stadium like Trump does. Only he does it by just opening the door. Um, and so a lot of big stars got lots of money. And she's now, I think, $20 million in debt for the campaign. And there's a lot of blame going back and forth, but long story short, she didn't know how to run a campaign. So here's those trines and those sextiles. Bring a person where few people go. It's like winning the lottery in a way. You win it and you win it and you win it, and then suddenly you're a millionaire, but you don't know how to manage your money and you lose it all. That's happened to many people who won the millions. Ironically, one of the shows I saw Trump do before he was still doing Celebrity Apprentice. He used to do other things where he did this one special where he talked to people who just won huge amounts of money, and he advised them how, yes, be generous, but always be sure that you don't become too generous. Be balanced with it, or you'll lose it all. But you know, and Trump has some authority to say that, because really it is actually true. He does these random acts of kindness ever since I've been watching him, since 1991, when my oracular instincts told me I've got to watch this man, this crazy man, um, this New York bigger than life, carnival barking real estate guy. Well, and the energy was, watch him because he survived the real estate crash in 1991 in Manhattan Island, and toughest real estate arena in the country, if not the world. And you know, his father, when he gave him some millions to start himself up in business, wanted him to do buildings in Queens, where his dad taught him the ropes of the industry. And his dad was very much against him, said, no, no, Dad, I want to go straight to the big ones. I'm going straight to Manhattan. And he said, oh, God, you're going to lose it. Well, he didn't. He did get in trouble with the casinos in Jersey City and all of that. But how he got out of debt and out of the problem, that's when my attention leveled on him. And I found myself watching him. I mean, I have a lot of things going on, but it's not like I'm just living watching Trump. I have many people that I'm doing this with, and things that I do in this reading of the world stuff that I do. But anyway, he was one of the people I was watching, and I watched him all through the 90s. I watched the Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice shows, but I made a point of not. I didn't care who won or lost. I just wanted to see how he handled them in their boardroom scenes. So I watched all the boardroom scenes. And I was saying, why am I watching this guy? You know, and then he starts talking about he wants to run as president. And I said, oh, maybe that's the thing. Maybe he is going to run for president. Maybe he will be president. So, so anyway, in his chart, he's earned it. He's had to fight hard and earn it, make mistakes, learn from them. And so it's just too bad that she has a chart that, I mean, on the rare times when I have people that have so many trines in their charts, it's often when I'm talking to them, I'm looking at their chart, I almost know what they're going to say. And they say, well, how's things going? He says, well, it's okay. Everything's kind of fine. I mean, I have a good life. Things kind of have come to me and all that. And anyway, so I said, yeah. And so you feel kind of blah, don't you? Yeah, that's right. I do. It's sort of like, I don't know. It's like things are good, but it seems like I'm missing something. I said, yeah, you are missing something. You're missing your squares and your oppositions. They're in the chart, and we're going to try to give them energy because those are what you need. In astrology, as I see it, and I'm not an astrologer, I'm a medium empath who uses divination tools sometimes, and one of them is astrology. So I'm free of the political correctness of astrology. I can say things like this, and I think they're true. That people will always look in astrology at, oh, trines, wonderful, that's always good. And they'll go, oh, oppositions, ooh, that's not so good. And squares, that's always bad. Well, it's beyond bad or good. Like I just said, if your trines are too many, then you get the Peter principle, where you have an ability to rise higher and higher in office to where you're at the top. But you get to a point where you get the top. And Barack Obama also has this problem, even though he has more intelligence and experiences as a politician than Kamala Harris could imagine. But still, he also was really good at getting to the top and remembering people who got him to the top. But in the end, when he got to be president, his son Neptune Square, which also George Bush had, which makes you delusional when you've listened to your gut, and what your gut is telling you is wrong, but you think it's right. And so he has this inner delusion, just like Bush, which is why Bush wouldn't talk to his father, who really was a good president, had experience. How often does it happen? In fact, it's never happened in American history that your dad was, when the previous generation was president of the United States. So, if you're somebody who's an executive, you're going to, like Trump is, natural born executive, he's always asking any people, any resources, and always asking them a lot of difficult questions to help him figure out stuff. So I imagine if his father had been president, he would say, hey, Dad, how did you handle this? And then kind of engage him and say, well, what if you did it this way or that way? And that's what Trump does daily in his interactions with people, when he's trying to get an idea of what he's going to do. But George Bush, with that delusional square, just said, well, do you ever consult your father? And he said this on 60 Minutes, says, I consult a higher father in my decisions, meaning God. So, and he literally has been caught saying, he said, God told me to invade Iraq, and I did. He said this to Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority leader, who's still alive to this day. He was in a meeting with him in the Egyptian um, um, resort, where they were having a convention with the president and the Palestinian question back in the time of President Bush's office. And he literally was pounding the table, say, I talked to God, he told me, and I did this, and I'm going to fix this thing with you and Israel, and all that. He didn't, because, Iraq was a mess. It was an 8-year disaster. We lost $3-4 trillion of treasure, 7,000 dead Americans, if you count also the contractors, and 30,000 wounded, and 1 million Iraqis killed. And the nation is messed up. And, you know, uh, and this is the same guy who also did the big thing at the end of his gut feeling, his way to fix the recession crash. That didn't go well either. So, um, Now, Obama has, and hopefully this is the last time I say this on any shows now that we're moving on because now it's irrelevant. I think Barack Obama has now lost any chance to do his third term, possibly for 12 years, if the Democratic leadership doesn't really sit back and look in the mirror and say, how did I screw up? Rather than, oh, this majority, the American people just don't understand anything. Wow. That's a really tragic way to look at it. That means you're not going to grow up and get wiser. And there are a handful. I just saw one guy named Phillips. He's one of the congressmen. I don't know much about him, but I'm going to watch him because he could be one of the, I think he's in Florida. He was on Fox the other day, and I was looking at him and going, he understands. He's saying, yeah, we got to look at the way we did things. It's we're the people with the problem, not the American people. We've got to start looking at how rebuild our party and readjust ourselves because really the people have spoken. They didn't like what we were telling them. So, and if you think, well, we'll just keep doing more of the same, I promise you, it takes no Nostradamus. If that's where the Democratic Party goes and its leadership, it will not lose. It might not win a presidential election for a generation. Deep into the 2030s, maybe. So, and ironically, that will not be good for the country either, because then the Republicans would become a one-party system, which is, would corrupt the Republican leadership and all of that too. So, what I'd hope would happen is that other parties would rise up, and the Democratic Party would just kind of dissolve. We've had parties dissolve before. I think we had Whigs at one point and other things, and these parties disappeared. And so the Democratic Party could be facing disappearance if they don't, and the void would be filled by another party or another system, or one of the smaller ones becoming stronger that we have in the fringes. So 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 Obama's out, but Obama had the same problem. He had his way of utilizing this square of Neptune was to try to win the girl that's impossible to get. And when he finally did, his wife, he couldn't do that anymore. So he had to sublimate that into politics, as a lot of politicians do. They get their sexual rocks off psychologically by having a lot of people love them and cheer them and all of that. And it's kind of an orgasmic experience for some of them, including Hitler. He used to almost after he won the crowd, and he'd step off the podium and collapse in a chair wringing wet, like he was exhausted from some orgasmic experience. And he meant it when he said, well, where don't you have a wife? Don't you have a lover? He said, no, the German people are my lover. He really meant it. Kind of one of the reasons why he had a bad psychological future. But so Obama, he he wins the election, and he's already looking, he had these 8 million guys and gals that were online that were going to be citizen lobbyists, which they legally could be, just because they're going to be getting online saying to people, hey, why don't you do this thing and that? 8 million people pressuring the opposition and pressuring Democratic Party members. It could have, if Obama had really applied that, he could have had a solid presidency, but he didn't, because he won the people. He got the white people to vote for a black man. He did the impossible. And so he was disinterested. So he kicked those 8 million. He didn't do anything with them. They were all ready to go. And he did it twice. He did it in the second term. He wooed them back and forward. We'll go forward now for sure. And then when he won in 2012, he kicked them again. So that's what happens when you're a person going after it. Once you got the girl that's impossible to get, you drop her like a bad habit and go for the next girl or the next impossible thing. And the impossible thing he was already doing, he wasn't 2-3 weeks into his presidency when he had this big dinner party with all the leaders of the conservative sides of America, media, Fox, all that, and the also the Republican senators and leaders of the House and all of that, and basically started to woo them. He wanted to win them over too. Now that's real hard to get, and he didn't get it. They made it very clear to him they didn't want the black man in the office, and they were going to do everything to make him a one-party nothing president. Rather than say, hey, thank you, I want to thank you all. It's good to have a transparent enemy. And I'm going to, tomorrow morning, and for the next 2 years, I'm going to harness all the stuff that I won, the political capital that I won, winning the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, to vote you out of the Supreme Court, get new justices when people are retiring, I'm going to make sure that all my media contacts are like a drum beat, are going to keep beating the drum until everybody's programmed to understand that this is what you told me, that that you're racist, that that you don't want a black man to be in the office, that he would have, if he had, and then just say, look, they don't want our change we believe in. They want to take me down and do everything they can to derail not just me, American people, all you people who voted for me. I mean, if he didn't have this square and it was another person, a cunning politician, he'd say, thank you. Hey, this meeting was very profitable. I'm glad I spent all this money on all you people. Now I know what you're going to do, and I'm going to make sure that I take even more seats from you in the midterm. And but what he did is he tried harder. He put all his energy into trying to convince him to be won by him, all through the 2 years that he had the House and the Senate and the executive branch. And ignored, did not give energy to his massive victory and the political things that Trump has also done. He's got the same chance. And Obama, even when he lost the House and the Senate in the midterm, he still was trying to win them over. He didn't really ever end it until about halfway through second term. That is the delusional tragedy of Barack Obama. The other is that he has this delusion that he can be a puppet master so he picks somebody who is inexperienced, and he's going to use that to his advantage, because clearly I can't imagine he could be that blind, even with this delusional issue, to really understand that Kamala Harris is an empty person, an empty pantsuit. He's got to be clever enough to know that. So I think he's going to make sure he was Willie Brown all over again, but not using his sweet Willie in this case. But politically speaking, he's going to be Willie Brown and be a mentor to her. But really, he was telling her what to do and be for his third term. Now that's over. That's done. Obama can now go back to Hawaii or go back to Martha's Vineyard and muse on great glories of the past and retire. He's done. But he put himself there because of this delusion. Now, so that's the first and second two-term presidents, so it's a long time of them that had this problem of the sun squared Neptune in their birth signs. Trump has it too, but not in his birth sign. He has this remarkable conjunction of planets. It's a remarkable chart, by the way. It is filled with all kinds of luck. It's not surprising to me that he just turned his head at the right moment and didn't get his head blown off in Butler in Pennsylvania. The man has this. He has luck in his moon positions. He has luck in his true north, which is conjoined Uranus, and his sun. 22 degrees Scorpio is, 22 degrees Gemini is his sun. He has 17 degrees. So it's in the conjunction strength of his Uranus, which is why he's Mr. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And he always will be, because that's his nature, using Uranus in that position. His ego, identity, and Uranus are one. And 15 degrees is the true north node, which for layman's, it's literally, how do you navigate? What are the positive and negative potentials of your chart that will allow you to navigate, always following your personal true north to success in your life? And what are things that can happen where your ship of your life goes off course and you don't get it, or you have to come back to it? And so all of that, his true north, his Mr. Surprise, surprise, and his sun solar essence are squared the United States birth chart position of Neptune in Virgo. So he has it with the United States and his people. Now, I won't go into the psychobabble, the astrobabble about it, but basically what that means, having it in Virgo, is it rules America's boom bust cycles. So Trump's success and failure will always be mainly involved with the economy. And in a way that, because his message, his campaign really ran a great campaign, not seen since Nixon. And his campaign was really about, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And, you know, there's a lot of ways you can get around things by doing that. And so what happened was, here's a moment of luck for Mr. Trump. Odd kind of moment, because Uranus is making surprises, even to him. He was intending to do 2 terms, and 2020 would be his second term. And so he was really doing the snake oil salesman, and saying how, my presidency, I mean, it's so amazing, it's so fantastic. We have this huge boom. It's just this boom that's so big. This boom, it's so big. This boom. He always says things 3 times, and it's kind of hypnotic. But he it wasn't a boom. It was a bubble that was going to burst. And if he had won the election, it would have burst over his head. And he would have really been in trouble. I mean, the snake oil ended up being poison, And so it didn't bust him, though, because by all kinds of means, Biden was allowed to win. Uh, with maybe an edge of 1 million fake votes across very important places of battleground states. And so he got to sit back and watch his bubble burst, on not only on Biden, but Biden gave it more juice by um, putting throwing $2 trillion into printing up and throwing an extra $2 trillion into the United States dollars and funds. He thought he could spend his way out of it. That actually hastened it and made it come faster. And so, because he had his part in it too, but now we have the situation. Now Trump is going to be president. So his presidency will succeed and fail on whether he can restart the economy, and not just for rich folks, but really, as he at least intends to in his promises, he actually starts to get people back to work and people feeling better, and there's a much better chance for that to happen now. However, now I'm going to get to now that's all in the past. Now I'm going to get to the other challenges. The euphoria is on both, the tragedy on one side, but there's a euphoria on the other. But I'm kind of happy to see that a lot of his supporters were very concerned over the last few weeks about all this talk about Mike Pompeo and Senator Cotton having major roles in Trump's presidency. And he got a lot of the Trump voters were on X, were making him aware. They don't bring that guy in. Look what happened. Those people derailed a lot of your presidency and all. Don't bring them in. And just today, he got on X and Truth Social, and he said to all his voters, he said, "No, no, 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 I'm not going to take Cotton or Mike Pompeo." He said, "Oh, they did good stuff for me." He always does the positive hyperbole, as he calls it. But and frankly, I think it kind of, again, another oracular gut feeling I've been having is, uh, is he keeping Pompeo and those people close to him like a cat that plays with a mouse, politically speaking? And it looks like that's just before the show happened. It seems confirmed that he was just playing around with those guys. That they're not going to be Secretary of State, not going to be Department of Defense. So I'm relieved for us because the scenario could be that I will get to one group he's blind to, the AIPAC Zionists, his own son-in-law. He's blind to it because he loves his daughter. They're very close, and I hope I'm proven wrong, but he is the source of the Zionists making him their president. And the other thing too that's really hard with Trump is he doesn't get Iran. I even wrote it in my first book on Trump a year before he's president, in the upset in 2015. I wrote it end of 2015. I said he just doesn't get Iran. He doesn't get the Middle East at all. He hopefully this will not be like Johnson could never get Southeast Asia, because he might he certainly Bolton and Pompeo. Also, Bolton's not going to be. He said, "No, I'm not going to use Bolton." Um, Bolton and Pompeo tried very hard to get him, talk him into not one but three new wars with Iran mainly, which would have been a complete disaster and could have pulled in China and Russia and been a nuclear crisis. See, so his luck, it saved him from having to face his bubble boondoggle in 2020, and it also saved all of us and his presidency by just the last minute. He is war adverse. This is true about him. He's not somebody that wants to start a war. He's a transactional fellow. That means you don't want to blow up your competition. You want to do a transactional situation where I scratch your back, you scratch mine, I give you this and may in the promise that later you'll give me that. And I mean, that transactional is a dimension of politics as much as economy and being a wheeling and dealing kind of person. But the best way to win him over is transactionally. But he's going to have a very rude surprise if he starts engaging. Hopefully, they're already doing it in back channels, engaging Putin and Russia and Lavrov, his foreign minister. They really have a very naive, even childish idea of what's going on in Ukraine. But they're going to get an education. Trump is going to get his education in the next few months, interacting in back channels with the Russians, and maybe there might even be talks. The Russians have always been open to talks, but what they've been getting from Zelensky in the comic, who became the puppet for a neo-Nazi government since 20 that was arising there since 2014 under the Obama administration, who made it happen. And now it's now he this Jewish Russian Ukrainian comic doesn't even know how to speak Ukrainian dialect. He had to learn it when he was in president. He's actually a Russian Ukrainian. He is now, he keeps saying that, oh, we will talk to Russia when you leave all the territories you've taken, including Crimea, and then we'll talk. And that I'm sure the Russians said, he's a comic, right? Is he telling a joke? I mean, that would be like Hitler saying, "Okay, I'll talk to the Allies, but I want you to give me all the stuff I took up to 1941 from you. That's mine now, because then we'll talk." Well, that won't go anywhere. And so the Russians are saying, you need to understand that we are winning this war. as I predicted they would be winning it a year before it happened even. We are winning this war, and we're in a much more powerful position of strength. I mean, this would be like if Hitler was trying to negotiate an end to World War II in 1945 when he was losing on all fronts. Eisenhower and Roosevelt and all Churchill was said, sorry, it's too late. The only thing we're going to, and they said this to him, the only thing we're going to accept is your unconditional surrender. That's it. And basically the Russians are saying that about the situation. Now they've put out some interesting things. One of the things Putin publicly put out was if the Ukrainian armies wanted to ceasefire, this is what we're open to. You stop fighting, you leave the Russian-speaking provinces that we have subsumed into our nation because they voted for it. These Russian Ukrainian states had enough of the Nazis. That means Zaporozhye, Kherson, and the Donbass, Lugansk and Donetsk. All your armies have to immediately withdraw from those borders where you are still in those areas. And then we will begin a negotiation. But you have to cease fire and immediately withdraw from those 4 provinces. So, and that's about as generous as the Russians are going to get, because they could very easily, and I think they will do this, they will take Sumy, they will take Chernigov, they will take Kharkov and Poltava and everything east of the Dnieper River, maybe even Kiev, they might take it. See, the thing that 2 of those 4, Kherson and Zaporozhye, have actually a sizable amount of their oblasts, their provinces, on the right bank of the Dnieper River. So that would give Russia a bridgehead over the Dnieper River as well. So it's probably, I mean, Putin really wants to talk. In fact, he talked. You don't hear this in the Western press, but he spent years after 2014 trying to use the Minsk agreements 1 and 2 and tried to create a situation where Ukraine would stay, except for Crimea. That's always been a Russian province, and except for since 1954 up to 2014 when Khrushchev put it into Ukraine. But he never dreamed that the Soviet Union would collapse. But it's a for 3 centuries it's been a Russian province. Almost all the people are Russians, and some Turkic people also there. So it's not a Ukrainian state. I remember when that didn't go back to Russia in 1991. I wrote notes in my file system. I said, if ever a 3rd World War will be started, it'll be started over Crimea. And because if Ukraine keeps Crimea, you keep Sevastopol, you keep the base where the Russians have their fleet, which means if they surrendered that, the European nations in the Crimean War tried to take it by force, because that would then mean that the Black Sea becomes a Western European pond. And that would be right in the soft underbelly of Russia. So the Russians aren't going to do that. And the Russians fought 2 vast battles to first losing it to Hitler and then taking it back in 44, losing it in 41, 42. And so they're not going to do that. What they're going to do instead, because of all the firing that's been going on from the Ukrainians launching missiles from Odessa, which is a Russian city, by the way, one of the most Russian cities in Ukraine, and Oblast, they're going to take that too, so that they won't be able to fire missiles at Crimea anymore. So or they may, if Putin can get an agreement that, because one of the agreements that would be part of any negotiation is all ethnic Russians and Russian-speaking citizens of Ukraine will not be persecuted anymore. That's one of the major reasons why this war happened. There were massacres in Odessa, massacres in Mariupol. There were massacres across the Donbass. I know, I saw them on videos and that live as they were happening. And the people that are there don't want to go back to Ukraine because I remember seeing Patrick, um, this American fellow that Patrick Lancaster that does one of the best war correspondents there. He's an American. He has a Russian wife and he kids and stuff, and he ended up staying there and reporting on it. And I've seen hundreds of hours of people in the Donbass saying, well, they just want the industries here. They don't want us. They hate us. They're killing us. They just want, they've been all these years since Ukraine started as an independent nation. All the Kiev has done is just take everything from us and not give us anything back. And you can see the whole place is run down because they'll use our coal fields. They'll use our heavy industrial centers that used to be the heartland of Soviet Union. They'll use all of that. But they don't want us. They want to kill us because they're constantly bombing them and massacring them all those years. And then finally it got to the point where it provoked Russia because the Ukrainians were going to start a major offensive in February into early March of 2022. And they were already gearing up with the artillery and they had all that NATO training. These 350,000 Ukrainians were for the last 8 years trained and aided and even infiltrated by NATO officers and men, but many of them mercenaries, thousands of them. Finally, the Donbass people saying they're getting ready to ethnically cleanse us out of here by force. And even Angela Merkel and even President Hollande of France, in their interactions with Putin on the Minsk 1 and 2 agreements, finally openly admitted publicly that they were only shining the Russians on, that they never intended for peace to happen, that they were not going to be guaranteeing any of that. It was their role. They're supposed to help guarantee that. No, they said openly, we were just buying Ukraine time so we could train them to NATO standards and they go to war with Donbass. And the Russians had the plea of all these millions of Donbass people saying they're coming to get us and massacre us all and send what's left, millions, into Russia. Well, the Russian army responded and preempted that offensive. That's how this war began. You will not hear that in the Western media because it serves the interests of this country that are not the truth of what's really going on there. So I'm giving you this backstory because, and the other important backstory that I have to give too is now we come to Trump. So that's one thing Trump's going to have to deal with. And his people are going to have to deal with a narrative that they're running into negotiations with, which the Russians are going to rip apart and hand them back to them. Say, start all over because we're not going there. If we don't get, we are winning this war, so we don't even have to talk to you. But we want to make some solution. We're still trying to resolve this thing without having to go to the war destroying Ukraine. But if you keep coming back with crazy ass stuff that's just not reality, we will keep advancing. And even if it takes us, we don't want to take the rest of Ukraine, but if you give us no other recourse, we'll go all the way to the Polish border. We don't want to. That would be a heavy burden on us. Uh, so, so, and there's people in America, some rather dark sources in the CIA and other places that probably think, let's get them bogged down and all the way in Lvov. Let's get the Russians have to actually occupy all of Ukraine, and then we'll grind them down that way. So there's a force of people around Trump's ear that would probably like to say that, the neocons. And Trump made a point, was just one of his carnival barker moments, I think, because he was saying to his crowd, says, well, if they do this, if they don't stop the war, I'm going to just flood Ukraine with all kinds of weapons. If he isn't just BSing for the crowd, he's going to soon find out that America has given all the weapons it can strategically give to Ukraine. And if it gives more, then the United States will not be able to defend itself. More than that, he's hopefully going to learn the very sorry state of the military-industrial complex. It gets all this $1 trillion. If you count all the other agencies involved, they get $1 trillion a year. Lots of money. And it's amazing how little of that has developed good weapons, a stockpile of millions of shells. Um, a military force that is which now currently can't make its quotas for volunteerism, so they're actually mothballing a lot of the U.S. Navy because they won't have crews. They're going to have to downsize a lot of the armored divisions and things like that because they don't have men and women who want to join. And now, just recently, the standards for being drafted are like 60% worse than they were before. They're going to take people who have illnesses, that are obese, that are, can't run a 5-minute mile. Um, and basically the quality of the forces will decline. And at a time when Russia is now building a 1.5 million man army with 800 to 900,000 of them in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian army is starting to fall apart. As I predicted, it would start around October, November. Well, it's happening. Just watch Military Summary Channel. Just type that into YouTube, and you will get Dima, who's a white Russian who's in Minsk, I think. And he, of all the mappers of the war, he's the best. Watched him a lot. It's very accurate. He doesn't confirm a thing until he really literally has the accuracy of being able to corroborate it. So a lot of the other people put stuff out there that's not really happening. So yeah, if you want to see the unraveling daily, just go to Military Summary Channel. Just type that into YouTube, and you'll see what I've been seeing for 2, 3 years. Um, so so the good news is that Trump has really good astrological interface with Putin. Putin's a Libra, Trump is a Gemini, they're air signs. There's a lot of trines. There's a lot, in a good way, a lot of like doors can open there. So they get each other. That's important. The other thing is that he has a similar good relationships with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. They get each other too. However, the real problem now, as we move from that theater of World War III conventional style to the other is, like I said, he doesn't get Iran. He just he doesn't get the Muslim world. And Trump does not get it. But I'm kind of seeing that he didn't get a lot of other things when he was president in his first term. He didn't get that neocons had him. They could do whatever they want with him. He was a wide open channel, and they would manipulate him almost into 3 wars. The good news is, he said it on Joe Rogan publicly. He said Bobby Kennedy has been feeding it to the audiences after coming out of his meetings with Trump for months now, that Trump is very much reviewing all of his mistakes, and one of them being Pompeo and Bolton, the other being the neocons. He's so it's good news today that he's not letting those people in. He's publicly told his because I'm hoping that his mandate, his MAGA people are going to keep him straight. And if they do that, and using Elon Musk's last platform for public commons that exists online or in any major way in the world, now that's not going to be erased. Kamala Harris was very clear, getting instructions from Obama, that she was going to pull the plug on X and take down one of our best genius entrepreneurs, and guys opening our whole space age situation, renewing it with amazing things. So deny a future of our country going into space. Well, that's all gone now. That's not going to happen. But now the new danger is, will Trump stay straight in his channeling the right people? Because if he channels the deep state, and how, see, he's also got those, he's got Adelson, the widow of the man who was the casino owner in Las Vegas. She gave him like $1 billion for his campaign, something like that. And of course, the good news is that it's great luck that he didn't get his second term, that now he's got this standalone term with no term in the future. So the pressure of him being bought, he could just say, well, he has actually more leeway. He can say, well, we'll try to do stuff, but we're not going to do what you put all that money in there for. And, I'm not going to be president in 4 years. So, it gives him more leverage and advantage, even with the money lenders that have been running him mainly from AIPAC and the Jewish lobbies and all of that. And so the other thing he's also said, he has said to Netanyahu, I think he said it when Netanyahu did his, he had all the clapping seals of the House and the Senate all, I think it was in July or something when they all came over to, and these are all the people, 90% of those people are all bought and sold by AIPAC, millions of dollars for their campaign successes funded, and Biden with $5 million given to him by AIPAC over the years. He's not going to, he told Netanyahu, I want you to end this war before before Inauguration Day, before January 20th. I want this war over. So what I'm hoping is he's alert to how he almost got himself in wars with last time. And I'm hopeful that um, he's going to remain war adverse because you see, I wrote about it in my first book about him, Trump for President: Astrological Predictions. Um, I He has a monumentalist ego. Now, I mean that not just in that he's got a big ego. It means his expression of his self as essence is evidenced by how he changed the face of Manhattan with his skyscrapers. So he loves those buildings. When he was a kid, he took his brother's blocks and he made a great big skyscraper. And he liked it so much that he didn't take it apart. He glued it. So it just became this big wooden skyscraper. This is his brother's blocks. And he glued it. He told the story in Art of the Deal. He's got a deep-seated desire never to see all his work go up in 30 minutes in a nuclear war, all wiped out by Russian Poseidon drone subs that have a 200 megaton warhead. He's not, he doesn't want to see all his Trump towers around the world going towering inferno down in nuclear war. I think if that's the trigger that makes him say no to war, so be it. It means your buildings will not all be coming down in flames too. Um, so so I have a feeling it's early in the game, but I'm just in a show like this, I'm just kind of putting out the things that I'm probably going to be looking at and commenting on. Is the right at right at this, even today they just announced it came out on the news that the the former head of the Senate, um, anyway, they're doing a secret vote. They're going to try to vote for the head of the Senate before the 3rd of January. And so it's going to be a pick there's a like 3 very anti-Trump people on that list that would try to derail anything Trump did. So, the danger is the next few weeks literally could see his administration toppled or compromised. That's the worst case scenario, that he gets to January 20th and it's another version of what happened before from a different um, quarter. So Mitch McConnell is behind this secret vote. There is one person on of the three or four that is pro-Trump. And so like it's already, I mean, Tucker Carlson is the one that got this news out. And and that means that now across Trump world, all those voters are starting probably to flood in feedback to Trump. So where Obama had to build a group of people that he kicked to the curb every time he won because it wasn't fun anymore. Time for another winning over the impossible person to get. But Trump has an army of people. He has a majority of the United States that voted for him, big one. And there are means through Elon Musk's and X not being erased by the other people because they didn't win. He has now there's a public forum that can tell him within the speed of light what they think. And I'm hopeful this is a revolutionary new idea, that very Aquarian age that this is happening, where there's quick access to people putting their 2 cents in about, no, we don't want that guy. He's deep state. We we want Tulsi Gabbard to be Secretary of Defense. We want Bobby Kennedy, and of course they are in there, and there's other people. And so he's going to listen to his people, not the neocons. I think that may be the case. But because he's so blind to personally to his wife, his daughter being married to Kushner, Jared Kushner, who's very inside the whole Zionist situation. Um, I got him on my October Hogue prophecy bulletins. I actually give you the text and the videos where you can watch him in a meeting I think in Harvard in March, where this guy is freaking out about this war. It's just all this devastation and the genocide that's going on, all the Palestinians getting killed. It's really terrible. And he just kind of did this. Well, um, you know, there's a business option. There's a business option in all this. I mean, when we remove them, they're living on choice beach property. So there's a business advantage in this. And when we get them out, and he was kind of saying maybe they're going to the Negev desert or somewhere. He doesn't even want to fill in the details of exactly. It almost sounds like Hitler say, let's take them to Madagascar, all the Jews. Because these are Semites just like Jews, and they're being holocausted just like the Jews were. We'll just think of the business opportunities and the profits that would happen now, all this beachfront property, some of the best. And so he was just cold-eyed, cold-blooded. And, he looked like somebody familiar to me, and I actually, I mean, Paul knows, you've seen the pictures. I had a picture of Jared Kushner. He's in a helicopter. He's got the big ear things on to listen to the radio and get the prop out of his ears. And it just happened that he's just in the exact same angle as the picture to the right is a picture of Reinhard Heydrich, the head of the SS. And they look like twins. I was even shocked when I just put that in. I said, is he channeling this demon, this guy? If he can say stuff like that when we get them out, you know, the the death toll is in the hundreds of thousands now, and literally, it's shocking. All this is going on, and what's Trump going to do about that? Because he won Michigan because a whole lot of Muslims in Michigan voted for him. So he's going to have to, he can worry about Adelson, but he's got to deal with all those swing voters that got Michigan into his tally to be president. So, but being he's Gemini, he's playing, he might make a deal with both. But the problem is this war is not going well. The Israeli army is getting creamed in Lebanon, and they hardly got only got far enough in to blow up a few villages. But they're losing lots of people, and and they're pulling out. So, and they're not winning in the Hamas regions, northern Gaza, and all that. And they pretty much stopped all food and medicine coming into 500,000 people crowding in the ruins of North Gaza, Palestinians. So, starvation is starting to happen. If you look at any pictures getting out of there, everybody's getting thin. And give it another few months, they'll all be walking skeletons. And so this is the worst thing since the Holocaust committed on Semitic peoples. Last time it was the Semitic Jews. Now it's the Semitic Palestinians. Same seed of Abraham, as we've talked before. And it's now, this is one of the biggest stories that just people are ignoring. They're just like, they're not doing anything, just like nobody did anything for the Jews in World War II. People are not doing anything for the Palestinian Semites in World War III. And so now, will Iran fulfill its threat to, well, hell, they were attacked. The Israeli attack failed because the Iranian missile systems shot down most of the missiles. And they were tagged, they were painted by radars that even the stealth fighter, the F-35, had to turn around and land back in Israel because they were being painted by some signal. Now, the Russians sent some really advanced, these big tower things on trucks. And it's probably Russian technology, but the Russians are the ahead of everybody in radar and drone technology, hypersonic. Um, so they can actually see the stealth fighters, so they had to pull back from that. So, but Iran has said, look, you killed some people, you attacked our country. We have a legal right to hit you back, and we will. Now, the question is, will they do it before Trump is in office? Or will they wait because they're also patient people? Um, the thing I just realized is the ancient Jewish state, which also lasted thousands of years, basically disappeared between the years 80, 70, and 80, 150, with the two Jewish rebellions. And so, effectively, nearly 2,000 years now, that ancient civilization ended. And it just dawned on me that what has returned to the same region that's now Palestine in 1948, becoming a state, does not have the the thread of being an existing civilization, a kingdom, a country, Judea, Israel, Zion, for 2,000 years. So it's starting all over again as a young nation. There's this quality that Iran has never had its existence broken by conquest or anything. It adapted, it survived. China has never had it, even though the Mongols came for a while. Actually, the Mongols were absorbed into China and became part of the China world. Same with Egypt. Egypt has been consistently there for 5,000 years. But the idea that people coming back to claim the Holy Land, well, that all ended when the Romans destroyed Judea and created diaspora, which there was no diaspora before that. So it's almost like the Jewish people need to realize that this isn't a return. This is a beginning from the beginning all over again. when it comes to Israel and the Middle East, because that civilization was destroyed politically, as a political social reality, as a civilization, not the Jewish religion, not the Jewish people, not the Jewish traditions. That has been ongoing. But as a political body, like Rome is gone. It collapsed finally in 1453 when Byzantium was taken by the Ottoman Empire. So that was the end. That's when Rome ended. But that doesn't mean the things that are Roman, that the Vatican, the Catholic faith, all these things, they lived on. So I want to make clear that I'm making a political statement about a political body that unlike Egypt, unlike China, their political thread has lasted millennia. The oldest, and Iran for three millennia has also been, as a political reality, sustained. So it just came to me today. I was just like, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's an important thing to talk about, because a lot of people are running the idea that coming back to Israel is to restore the kingdom. And the reality is going to be that no, there's not going to be a restorative kingdom. And there's also a lot of, as you know, Torah, Jewish interpretations and other interpretations that are saying this whole coming back was wrong. I mean, I have many rabbis that tell me this, that it was wrong, that it's not what the prophecies, we've talked about it in a number of our meetings, Paul. But this idea of returning to something which was lost 2,000 years ago is an illusion that has to be faced. And maybe if that expectation is removed, maybe at some point, Jewish people and Palestinian people could live there in peace. Um, so that's one of the ideas that I just dawned on me is one of the dreams that are false. And so uh, it's very early. It's only days since the election, and I've tried to avoid getting too involved and give myself a little break.
Have you looked at the chart for President Xi and how it corresponds to Trump's?
It does in an interesting way. He is a Libra, and also it's also favorable. And that's what I'm hopeful about, because they're going to find out. Trump's going to find out that Xi and Putin can do transactions that are profitable for everyone, and peace is what's the most profitable. So if he can just, whether he's just trash, Geminis love to trash talk, so even as presidents, and I mean, notoriously, Wagner, a famous Gemini, he trash talked in Judaism and music. That was one of his many great essays that didn't go very well. But he's just trash talking. Um, so I think um, I have premonitions of potential success in a that could eventually reach to what I've said back in 2021, when Putin and the Russians put out a whole new architecture of security for Europe. And now it's this idea of theirs. This is kind of out there, but it's their ultimate goal is to create a new architecture of security for the world, where there will be peace and everybody can prosper. And the original idea was given to the Ukrainians, the Europeans, the NATO, and the United States capitals, EU and NATO and US and Ukraine. I don't know if it went to Ukraine, but to those. And it was a page, and I quoted it at the end in one of my early things I did in 2022. I said, this, whatever, and I will say it again, whatever happens in the years to come, this will be the result, a variation of this plan that Lavrov and Putin put out in his Security Council, which is who really runs Russia. And Putin is just the main fellow, but they often, if they disagree with him, he has to comply. So this whole idea of him playing uber dictator, Darth Vader's master, and Palpatine running the whole show in Russia is so off the reality. It's funny, except that this is serious stuff, because if even your leaders think this is true, then you really got a reality problem going on here. So the the security plan originally was that it would erase all the problems that happened. It's on this fundamental idea that if if I gain security at the expense of someone else, it's not security. I mean, if NATO feels more secure by advancing and taking all of Eastern Europe and gaining more and more strength and putting all of that on Russia's border, finally to Ukraine, which if you take Ukraine, then you're only a few hundred miles from Moscow. Your security is not security for the Russians. And even George Kennan, when he saw this advance before he died, and he was really one of America's great Cold Warriors, Cold War One, when he saw that Clinton was advancing NATO past the promise of Germany after its unification and heading closer and closer to Russia, Kennan said, "Oh my God, that's going to start World War III. You guys are setting yourself up to start World War III, because you will go, it'll end up nuclear because you get too close to the Russians, and it's clear that you're encroaching like Hitler did, and all Napoleon, and all the times where tens of millions of Russians got killed. They haven't forgot. You forget all the time. That's why you keep doing that dumb shit every time again. You don't remember your history. You don't learn from your mistakes, but the Russians remember. And so that education has to happen. And I hope it will happen for Trump. That there's a lot there's a lot of context that Americans don't get, including at the very highest offices. Um, so this security thing would basically do this. NATO would have to take all of its infrastructure, military infrastructure, and destroy it, just like the Russians destroyed it when the Warsaw Pact ended, where the Soviets took all their infrastructure back into Russia, military, like bases, warehouses, arsenals, all of that. That this would have to happen, that it would have to go back to the agreement of 1990, not one step east from Germany onward. So that whole area, all those areas, has to be demilitarized. The Russians would take all of their nukes and put them in Central Asia, Russia, Asian Russia, past the Ural Mountains. America would have to take all of their nukes and take them into Kansas or somewhere, take them out of the European continent. So there would be no short range abilities to start a sudden nuclear war. And the whole thing is built on mutual security. Now the Russians feel secure. Now the Europeans are not going to need to worry about Russian missiles hitting them, because they've all been stockpiled away in an area as far away as America's stuff is going to be stockpiled away in the central part of the United States. And that's just the starting point. But now I'm hearing that because of the alliance with China and the BRICS coming up, now the new idea is an architecture for security for the US and Eurasia. So that the Chinese are secure. So basically, it's setting up a situation, and you can imagine that the military industrial complex is going to do whatever they can to destroy this and the people who want or say yes to this in this country, because this is taking this is taking their business away, which is to continually create chaos in the world, disorder, and perpetuate war. And you know what? If the military industrial complex of this country went bust tomorrow, all the wars would end because we're creating them. We are, we, this country has become a warring nation. And it's so bad that the whole world is starting to move away from us to the BRICS alliance. And what's our answer to that? The BRICS are not against the US dollar. They're just against not being able to use it because we're sanctioning them, punishing them, ordering them to do this or that, not respecting their sovereign nations. So they'll say in the BRICS, look, we're not against the US dollar. We hope sometime the US dollar could join this alliance and America and everybody, because this is an alliance of what you forced us to find another way to buy and sell and grow our economies and when that happens, brings peace to our countries and prosperity, and to have a world that is not in disorder and constantly being thrown into chaos, but a more stable world so that we can work on our other social problems and things and make things better. But you guys over in America, you just want war because that's how you make your money. And we don't want it anymore. It's been enough of this 500 years of colonialism. Now this World War Americanism. And if you stop it, we're okay with you. We even start using your dollar again. The thing that if Trump was going to do something that would slow down BRICS, maybe he'll do it. It'd be kind of something he might do. Because I know he says, I don't like sanctions only for a short term because it ends up damaging things. So he already knows as a businessman it's not good business. One of the things he might do in that surprise, surprise, surprise moment is he might one day declare that the US dollar is going to lift all sanctions on all people around the world and nations that we've had sanctions. We are going to lift it because it's a burden on our dollar and it makes our dollar toxic. So I've just written the order. All the sanctions are gone. All the hundreds and hundreds of sanctions on 3/4 of the world. And that's not going to stop BRICS continue to make its own situation, but it will save the US dollar. It'll You want to improve your economies? You want to have a stable world where Americans can have a dream that they're losing because it's all going to the military madmen who want to make money off death? Is that American? I don't think so. This is not what the founding fathers envisioned us being. So we will also profit from that. The ending of wars, deconstructing the setups that have forced people to make huge armies. Russia has a huge army because we keep trying to shoot them indirectly or directly. You want to see the armies disappear in China? Well, stop talking about taking Taiwan. Then and making stop doing that and let South Asia and all these people decide what they want to do. And then their armies will diminish because, as the world becomes more peaceful, the armies will begin to diminish. There is no need for them. China's got 3 million man army because of us threatening them. North Korea has those nukes because they watched what happened to Gaddafi and others. They watched how America just went in and with NATO and destroyed Iraq. I mean, Iraq, yes, and also Libya and Gaddafi, who he even made the gesture of getting rid of his nuclear program. And the first thing that happened to him, they took him down. Now, if I'm in Pyongyang, I'm saying, you know what? And Iran's even being forced. Iran doesn't want a nuke, but they're probably now going to start building a nuclear bomb system. It's been kind of the Ayatollah Khamenei has kind of opened up the gate for them to create a deterrent So they're, because Israel has them now, it's out in the air because of that leak that happened a few weeks ago. They're talking about Israel's nuclear weapons. That's official now. They have them. And if you're the only one that has nuclear weapons, then you can do whatever you like to people in your region. And that is why it happens that deterrence then happen. And I think in last show, I was talking about how there's a story that I don't know if it's true that Saudi Arabia has 30 nukes that the Pakistanis built that they paid for that are going to be shipped to them. So they will be a nuclear power. The UAE is going to be a nuclear power. And now Iran is going to be a nuclear power. And, to think, oh, how evil these people now have bombs. What's happening? No. Israel had a bomb and started this mess from the beginning in the 1960s. And because they have had the bomb, they've exploited it and hurt people and destroyed countries in their region, kept them weak with US help. And so that, that's what taking down Saddam Hussein in Iraq was about. I mean, Saddam Hussein used to be a CIA asset. But on the bidding of Israel, they weakened him, and then Syria is constantly being weakened, so it can never thrive. Um, and this is just toxic. Is it any wonder that Israel's beset on 7 fronts if it treats its neighbors like this for so many decades because it has the bomb? Well, now Arabs are going to have the bomb too. And who caused that to happen? Israel. So it's karma, people. It's karma. What goes around comes around. If you want to be the sole nuclear power in your block, everybody else eventually is going to get one too. And then there's parity and deterrence, or it's the end of the block. It all goes boom. So, that these are the big, amazing things that Trump is going to have to deal with. And I must say, I had no hope of the other side getting any of this. I think um, we were. I'm seeing a lot of the darkness vanish, but there's ways in which this change could also be sabotaged. And I just hope that Trump continues to learn and continues to surprise us, and that his people continue to lobby him hard daily on why they love him. They don't want deep state people. They don't want neocons. They don't want wars, and he is war averse too. They don't want our money going off to Ukraine in a losing war, like losing war in Afghanistan, losing war in Iraq, losing war. We haven't won a war since World War II. Losing war in Vietnam, losing war in Korea, stalemate. We haven't won a single war. Oh, Grenada, I'm sorry. Yes, we came in and fought some Cuban soldiers in a Caribbean island. And oh yeah, in Panama, we won that one too, where it's just complete one-sided affairs. We won those two little forgettable wars. But nothing that matters to us have we won. So the only thing then is the military industrial complex is only there to make money and not make defensive weapons that work. Ukraine has proven this. The Israeli war against Iran and Hezbollah is proving this, that it's one of the biggest boondoggles in human history is that all those billionaires that live in a ring around Washington, D.C. have done nothing but make a profit, not a purposeful defense capability. And our weapons are crap because I've seen them blowing up. And so bad things that could potentially have a good result of waking people up and making different, better choices that are not so bogged down in war addiction and sanctioning, weaponizing the dollar, which is killing us, not the people. They've said, enough of you people, enough. We wanted to trade with you guys, but now you're sticking this left, right, and center to us. And now we have a choice. We don't have to sit under your tyranny anymore. So the simple thing is Trump needs to take a look at that and said, okay, I'll take the tyranny away. All the sanctions like that, gone. he might do that.
Mhm. Well, we've reached that point, John.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours.
Okay.
So I want to remind the audience, please click the link in the description of this video and all the videos I have done with John. That will take you to his website. That way you can sign up for his periodical, sign up for a reading. We're definitely going to be going through a new era. I think we're in a new era. I don't think it's by accident or that we're going to see Trump ushering in the 250th anniversary of the country.
Yeah.
I feel positive. I feel
I do.
generally feel positive with what's going
Um,
on.
a lot of dangers evaporated last week.
Yeah, but we're not out of the woods. But
No.
I feel that in terms of probabilities, we're better off with what
Well,
happened.
I can tell you right now, I'll admit it to all of you, is that, I up until the election, I was basically with all my plans and other books and things to do. I go on doing them, but I really was preparing myself to be blown up in a nuclear war with a lot of you with me. That still might happen, but it's not as close as it used to be. Just it's moved away. Whatever faults Trump has, he is war adverse, and that may save all of us.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, well, thank you for predicting a good outcome for the election
Yeah,
and being right but
I'm kind
you're
of shocked. I was
the
expecting to
guy
go
that
down in flames.
the guy that had the keys, the 13 keys,
Yeah, the
and
13 keys. I
his
saw him
name's
melt, so everybody
Alan
knows.
Lichman.
I
his
saw him melt down. I saw.
Yeah, his
Go
name
ahead.
is Alan Lichman.
Yeah, that's right.
Lichman.
Alan
So
Richmond.
yeah, but he definitely just went totally. My dog's getting crazy now.
Well,
But
it's so funny because if you do prophecy work,
yeah,
um, if you see an outcome and it doesn't happen, it, that means you didn't see it. You didn't see that the outcome that you didn't want did happen because your ego and your bias is involved in the future you want to have happening. But this work doesn't work that way. It is you cannot you have to put your ego aside. You have to put your desires aside and simply be available for the potentials of the future. And you gotta put Republican and Democrat and all that aside to do it. And clearly, when I watched him having his meltdown, he clearly this basic rule of seership he was not doing at all. And oh,
well,
it didn't
yeah,
happen because you aren't worthy enough for my great prediction, which I saw as the truth happening. Well, no, it wasn't the truth. You weren't reading the people right.
it's this the Trump orange man bad syndrome.
Yep.
That's happening in the mainstream media.
PDS.
Yeah, yeah.
PDS is a real mental illness.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. No, it's all over New York. I mean, these ultra liberals, they're having fits. They are having fits.
Unfortunately, my
Uh,
town, which is very liberal, is just kind of moving on. It's kind of nice. That's what's special about this little village I live in. They're not even having I'm not having to do therapy in the produce department at Star Store. Like in 2016, people, what's going to happen? I don't know what. Well, he is the president. He's not my president. Well, what country do you live in? According to the Constitution, he is. He's not my president. Well, grow up.
yeah, and a lot of people are going to need to grow up with this situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to have to wrap it up, John. But thank
Yeah.
you very much. Again, audience, please click the link. That will take you to John's website, sign up for the periodical, and do a reading. So,
Yeah.
John, please tell the audience good night.
Good night.
Okay, let me stop the recording here. let's see here. Missed that.